Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Madhu Andela Institute for the Advancement of Science and Culture. And we are here today for a very, very informative and enlightening conversation. Today is the 19th. It is June 19th. And it's a special day in the history of African Americans, especially those of us who are from Texas, like myself. This is the day that allegedly we got the news that we were free on paper. And the unique thing about it is it was 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. So many of the newly freed enslaved Africans began to commemorate this date. And it is kind of spread beyond Texas. So for those who celebrate, happy Juneteenth. Take this time to reflect on our history and most importantly, our next moves. So as usual, I like to give a shout out and love to everyone who is catching us live. And then, of course, all of you who will be catching us on the archives. In our chats right now, we have LB, Don Williams, Magi, Al Boabab, as in the Boabab tree, Brother Chavez from Houston in the house, Phi Lighten Tis, Tony X, Infinite Minds has just joined us. For those of us who are on Facebook, Sister Mika, I see you, Dr. Rivera, I see you, who will actually have on Sunday. We'll have Dr. Rivera and a young brother by the name of Walter Duarte Odara. They are out of Brazil. And young brother Odara is working on his PhD. And we'll be talking about African philosophy, Afrocentricity out in Brazil, as well as the social movements and things going on further south in Brazil. So they'll be joining us live, and we will have an interpreter because I don't speak Portuguese. And so we'll have an interpreter facilitating that conversation. So join us on this coming Sunday, the 21st. It will be at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So thank you for joining us, Kwame, and in Simply Neek, and Brother Ben, Sister Kirsten on the Facebook. Hold on one sec. Let me facilitate these things there. Okay. So thank you all for joining us. And without further ado, our special guest today is Brother Byron Wilson from the wefight.com and the Wilson Academy out in Georgia, who is going to give us some pointers and some next steps. I happened to come across a video of our brother that was being shared concerning taking the momentum of the protests and the times, and I like what he said, and I think it is very practical what he has said and what he's doing, and it's along the lines of, and this is ironic, since I'm not the kind of person who likes to how should I say put myself in a category under a type of name per se. So like when you say you are Marxist, or something to that nature, after Karl Marx. But if I did, I would say that I'm a Wilsonian, an Amos Wilson type man, a blueprint for Black Power. So, if you know me and my love for Amos Wilson, and the kinds of insights and practical solutions that he brings, as well as the psychological component, I say that this brother, also a Wilson, is along those same lines. So without further ado, I want y'all to welcome Brother Byron F Wilson. Thank you, brother, for coming on the show. How are you today?
No problem. I'm doing very well. I'm actually honored to be on here on the holiday, as it were. That's big time. That's big time.
Yes. Thank you. First and foremost, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Educational background. How did you get to the mindset and the motivations for kind of where you are today? If you could kind of lead us up to that.
Sure. I'm from Akron, Ohio.
Okay.
I live in Atlanta now, and I got to Atlanta by design. I went to a predominantly white high school. It's a blue ribbon school, so you had to test to get in. I was a gifted student, and so I got into school. But I was one of 5 Black students in my senior class. And to be honest, I just was tired of that. And so I sought an HBC. I started off at North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride. And but I was an athlete as well. So I was an all-state basketball player. So I played at A&T. But then some coaching decisions were made, and I ended up needing to go back home. And I ended up finishing at The Ohio State University. I played basketball there as well. And so it gave me a unique perspective in that I was able to see both ends of the spectrum in terms of not only the athletic experience, but just the college experience in general. And for me, I've always been interested in being an entrepreneur. I've never had any intentions of working for someone outside of doing so long enough to get the necessary capital to do my own thing. And so that's essentially what I did. I interned in the NFL with Carolina Panthers. That allowed me to transition into a pretty nice corporate job. I did corporate sales for a couple of years. And what a lot of people don't know is to get the money to start my school, the Wilson Academy. I opened my school when I was in my early 20s. And I had $500 to my name. I worked all night as a manager, night shift manager at a gas station. And then I would sleep 3 or 4 hours, and then I would work all day. And so that's what I did instead of getting a loan. And I moved into a fairly dangerous extended living motel. It was a motel, really, facility. For a couple of years, I primarily ate ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and eggs. And I stayed in shape by doing 500 push-ups every night, right? And so that was my grind. I did that because I share this particularly with young people because I needed to understand, when you have barriers. I knew I was early 20s Black man. I wasn't going to get a business loan. So I created a way by just making personal sacrifice and grinding. and sacrificing my body and rest, really, to be honest. And so fast forward, here we are. The Wilson Academy is an elite academic private K through 12 Black school. We have a STEM focus, but also a financial education focus, which I think is pretty unique. I don't know of a lot of schools that really have that. So I have a lot of students that actually run businesses. My 8-year-old daughter runs a business. You know, my 16-year-old runs a business. People kind of know my 15-year-old because she was in the news. She got into Spelman when she was 13. And so I have a lot of gifted students like my daughter and others that, because of our model, have been able to excel. So that's kind of my background, you know, blue collar guy from Akron, Ohio. I'm in Atlanta now.
I appreciate it. I was just about to ask you about the Wilson Academy.
Yeah.
And how long has that been in existence?
So 2002. So what happened is in 2000, I started a professional tutoring company.
Okay.
And we evolved to school from there. You know, parents asked us actually to homeschool 5 boys. We call them the Fab Five. And then we just evolved from there. And now we're a full-fledged K through 12 private school.
I see. And I think it's very important for the viewers to understand the vision and the grind that you had to endure to make this, vision a reality. And I'm pretty sure that, that even seemed to pale in comparison to actually running and expanding the Institute. And so, we have, I'm not going to say any names, but individuals, talking about setting up schools, but don't want to put in that kind of work to make it, happen. And people don't understand that there are people like you who are starting these types of institutes that we can all support and help to expand in many ways. And so I'm recently just because I'm recently being acquainted with you, learning about saying the Wilson Academy, and I'm very impressed. And it's ironic that news about the young lady had been circulating for a while, and I've even shared it a number of times, and then to come to find out that that's your daughter, it makes sense. So yeah, that's dope. And so I became aware of you by a video I think has gone viral right now, where you're talking about this 2-point plan and this kind of movement that's initiating, which you have labeled we fight. What is it? We shall fight.
How we fight.
Yeah, how we fight. Hashtag how we fight.
Right.
As a matter of fact, that's the name of the website as well. How-we-fight.com.
Correct.
Where you can get more information. But tell us about that, and how did that come about?
Sure. Incidentally, Facebook took that particular video down today because they said it was hate speech. Right. Which obviously, but what that does is it's a testament to the power of what it is that we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to do is pay attention to how people are responding to your message. How does the controlling class respond to what it is that you do? So what you have to understand is when you look at the response that we're getting from some of the things that we're doing. So when you get a favorable response from who is in essence your opponent, then that tells you that you're doing what they want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we are talking about economic empowerment, things change. You're right. So, for example, and then I'll talk to you about the movement. But for example, if you look at Starbucks, right? So they had the policy where they said they're not going to let their employees wear Black Lives Matter paraphernalia.
Mm-hmm.
Then Black people get on social media and say, "Okay, well, we're not going to buy your coffee."
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, Starbucks changes their policy. But then what do black people say? They better had changed it or I was going to, instead of recognizing they showed you your power, why would you go back? Like they're showing you where your power is. So that's why you see all of this appeasement going on where, you know, see, you got to understand, they're willing to say to white people, you can't put your Confederate flags in NASCAR events anymore, right? They're willing to give this money. The NFL is willing to commit $250 million because on the face value, it looks like it's doing something, but they keep giving it to the same organizations that won't do anything impactful with it. They know who to give it to. So it's appeasement, because not only are they afraid of what they saw in terms of the physical response to the rioting, but they're really afraid of economic empowerment, about us diverting our funds to ourselves. And so that's what the How We Fight movement is all about. And that's why it's ironic. Yesterday, I got a call from the FBI about that, about, are you a hate group? It's incredible, right? But that tells you that you're on the right. It's fine. It tells you that you're on the right track. I don't mind it at all. And so the How We Fight movement, we talk about the 2-point plan. There's the reason that these things keep happening to us is because we can provide no consequence, right? We can provide no consequence. And so here's my thing. We have to find ways to provide a consequence. And the best consequence that you could provide is an economic consequence. So there is 2 points to that. Now, the first thing is just, you know, to be met with force and not respond in kind is both unnatural and un-American. And so one of the things I talked about is we need to exercise our constitutional right to bear arms. Now, I don't, you know, and that's one of those things where there's got to be at least the threat of physical consequence. You know, there's a county, there's an area in Texas where everybody can conceal carry. And so they have like the lowest crime rate in the country. Why? Because whatever you're about to do, you have to think, maybe his hands are quicker than mine, right? And that's the it all balances out. You know, if you look at Ahmaud Arbery here in Georgia, had he been carrying at the time when he was lynched, maybe he's alive now. So that was one part of it. It was a show of physical strength, and it's not about going out and trying to kill white people. It's about me exercising my constitutional right, just like those white gentlemen did when they didn't want to wear masks. See how they took these assault rifles and went to the steps of the courthouse? People called them patriots. So it's the Constitution. If they don't like that, they have to change the Constitution at this point. But the second and more important part of that is the economic empowerment, and that's what we're about. So if you look at our first initiative, it is asking people, it's been doing really well. We were asking people to exclusively eat at Black-owned restaurants. And we chose that initiative because it's something everybody can do. If you think about it, the first time someone probably gave you money, it was for you to get something to eat. And so you have young and old are going to be able to go out and make an impact. And we're not, you know, this is a marathon. So for me, we're talking about a lifestyle change. You know, there are a lot of these organizations that are talking about the one-day boycotts, and that's fine if you want to get people engaged. But, you know, these corporations have withstood COVID-19. One day is not going to change the dynamic. It's just not. I'm not hating on it. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. What I'm saying is it's not going to be enough. We have to change our mindset. So we have to go from being consumers to producers. So that's what How We Fight is about. It's about changing our concept and empowering ourselves. And that's why I get calls from the FBI, and that's why I get death threats, and that's why Facebook, you know, removes videos, because we're actually talking about something that can change our condition. It's no different than the Jewish community. That's why you can't kill a Jew like that, right, in the streets as an officer. The Italian community, they've done the same thing. So the communities who have insulated themselves by building themselves economically, and it's got to be deliberate. It requires intent. And we've been taught so much to integrate. We've been taught that it's bad to say the word Black. If you probably remember, some of our parents, when they're around white people, they won't say the word Black. But that's how strong that indoctrination is. So that's what we're up against. So there's an educational component to what it is that we do, but it's about economic empowerment.
It's they're comfortable saying simply people of color,
right,
and whatnot, and that's something that you know, kind of going back, we just recently did a show, you know, the beginning of a series, you know, on learning how to fight. And how I came up with the issue of the series is something I've been thinking about for a number of years now. And that is, you know, one of the things I was thinking about was, okay, if African Americans are the most highly affected, for example, by the law, you know, why isn't the law taught in these areas where it's predominantly Black people?
Correct.
Like, you know, like this is part of the class curriculum that
Correct.
you learn about, you know, it wherever you're at. What are the laws? You know, like if you're stopped by the police, don't say anything, you know, saying demand your lawyer, da da da. Like this is ingrained in them, and this is just part of the curriculum. And so, you know, how do you protest, and how do you, you know, and then at the same time, how do you build your own businesses and da da da. Like this is a way to learn how to fight in different ways,
sure.
As well as, you know, institutions, and more than likely this will have to be separate, but you know, the self-defense aspect. So you know, this is what they do in terms of ROTC, you know, that's standard in a lot of schools. And even if you like survival in terms of Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you know, things of this nature, that, you know, why aren't these things, you know, included in the curriculum where predominantly, you know, Black people, you know, saying are, especially on that. And so I was thinking about, you know, there needs to be a curriculum in school and out of school on teaching us how to fight in these different arenas. So whether we're talking about economic, whether we're talking about physical, so martial arts, weapons training, you know, safety, things of that nature, you know, just around in your health, you know, growing your own food, you know, like all of these as defense mechanisms, you know, for our people. And so then I come across your video, and then there's How We Fight, you know, saying.com, and which I just shared a few screen shots, or just scrolled a little earlier to show people, you know, what the site looks like or whatnot for those who haven't visited just yet. And so that is one component that I'm very appreciative of, you know, not only in terms of the language that is being used, the target market, but, you know, in this day and age is for those of us who are not, you know, African American, it seems audacious to, you know, to articulate, you know, self-reliance, you know, cooperative economics and things of this nature, which is stuff that they do all the time for themselves. So, you know, you can see just based upon what you're just saying that this is something that they don't want. And so this is why we have to be more vigilant and getting these things done. So what I want to do now specifically is to talk about your 2-point plan. And I know you kind of mentioned the restaurant thing, but kind of go in a little bit more detail.
Right.
And, you know, what is the expected outcomes, you know, of the 2-point plan? Sure.
So when you talk about those academic components, we do teach that at the Wilson Academy. But in order for you to see that in our communities, we would have to educate our own. So like the brother LeBron James, we're both from Akron. We actually lived on the same street. He has a school in Akron, but it's a charter school. The brother Jalen Rose, he has a school in Detroit, but it's a charter school. So a charter school is still a public school. So you work in conjunction with the public school district. So you're still limited in certain aspects. We're completely independent. And so, to be honest, what would have to happen is you would have to see more Black independent schools in order to get that narrative, or more after school programs. And then you could still get that exposure from some of those public school students to get that. But also you'd have to use, I think, television, in all honesty, because you're not going to get these things taught in public school. But if you think about it, look at what Sesame Street did for most of us, right? So that would be the easiest way to get that narrative out is Black programming. The problem is we don't have our own networks. So we have to start taking advantage of technology and creating some of these things, right? So BET is owned by Viacom. It hasn't been Black owned in a very long time, since Bob Johnson sold it a long time ago. So we don't really have an outlet. If you think about it, there's no Black news station. Where would you go to hear Black news? There's nowhere, like, not on TV. So these are some of the issues that we talk about, because so with how we fight in terms of that economic component, first thing you have to understand is we have to change a mindset. I mentioned briefly switching our mindset from consumers to producers. That's the first thing. So if you listen to our music, which really drives our culture, right? It's a culture of spending. Most of the songs are bragging about how much we spent. Like, I can afford to spend more on this car than you can. There's even a show, which is actually a very bright brother, 2 Chainz is, but he's on a show on Vice Network called Most Expensivest. But that's the whole point of the show. Go around and talk about how expensive. It's actually a popular show. So there's a culture where, because we have been denied certain things, we have sought to gain equality through the acquisition of material items. What we really sought was equality as human beings, but we couldn't get that. So I can drive the same car. I can live in your neighborhood. I can have the same shirt. I can have the same jewelry. So it's just an effort to seek that. And one of the things that I believe in, right, is I'm not going to be walking around holding a sign trying to convince you that my life has value. Obviously, my life doesn't matter, or else we wouldn't be having these conversations. If my life mattered, then an officer wouldn't shoot me on film and then stomp my body and stand on top of it. Weeks after riots against the same type of behavior. Like, do you realize that after we rioted in Atlanta, the very next night, they pulled a girl out of a car that went to Spelman, and a guy in the car went to Morehouse, like the Atlanta police, the next night. So there's a culture that is telling us no one cares about Black life. But here's what we know they do care about is your Black dollars. And so what we're talking about is, let's strengthen ourselves by controlling the things that we can control. Let's stop asking for change and seeking validation from the white community. Because, like it or not, that's what you're doing when you're saying, I'm tired, we just want to live. Okay, they've given you their response for 400 years now. What are you waiting for? What are you listening to? What else needs to be said? So our movement is about empowering ourselves. There are enough brothers out here and sisters that own things at this point to where we could build around each other. And when I look at the Atlanta community, so you see all of these, most of the reality shows that have Black content are based here in Atlanta, right? So you know Black people in Atlanta have some money, but it's not collective, so it doesn't really matter. It's not like we're all using it in one pool to strengthen the Black community. It's just Black people with money. So what we're talking about is creating leverage, because at the end of the day, a good friend of mine is actually a lobbyist. So I made that comment, and I think it was controversial for some when I said that voting isn't going to solve our problems. People got upset. What I did not say is that voting was a waste of time. In fact, I was very succinct about saying, I'm not saying that it's completely useless. What I'm saying is it's not going to solve your problems. Evidence, you had a black president who was killed when Obama was president. All these people that you're wearing their face on your t-shirts that were killed by police officers, that was on Obama's watch. I'm not blaming the president for that, but that's also not his job. And that's not what, see, that's what people don't understand. America is, the foundation of America is racism. So when a lot of our components about education, so you think about this, and this is great that it's Juneteenth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did slavery end? Well, no, it didn't. It evolved. So we're actually celebrating the end of something that didn't end today. Because the reality is there was no prison system prior to the end of slavery. In fact, the prison system was only created as a response to the end of slavery. They needed a way to make us work for free again. So what did they do? They said, okay, if you break the law, you become what? Ward of the state, which means the state owns you. It was an absolute response to the end of slavery. In fact, policing, the police, you know how the police began? It was so that you could go after slaves who had escaped and bring them back to their masters. That's what the police department is. Look it up. Historically, that's what it is. So now, if you think about foundation, why are you surprised when an officer shoots you on camera? When you know the foundation. Why are you surprised when none of these cops are convicted? The whole justice system is built upon the prison system. And the prison system is simply the evolution of slavery. These are just facts. So what are your expectations of that when you really understand your history? So I think a lot of people would like to dive into, the movement without understanding what America really is. So a lot of what we have to do is just education. Then once you understand what America truly is and you understand your place, then you say, what was the effect of integration? What was the purpose of integration? What have we done in the past that was successful? Anytime people destroy what you have done, that means that it was a threat. I don't know if you're a sports fan. I played basketball. So look, we leave you open when you can't shoot, right? When you can shoot, nobody helps off of you. So what you got to understand is when you're a threat, we shut you down. That's why they burned Black Wall Street, Durham, Auburn, Rosewood. I could go on and on. That's why they burned those things, because Black economics is our way. Actually, Dr. King was murdered because if you look at his work, he had become a lot more Malcolm X-like towards the end of his life. And actually, he started to talk quite a bit about Black economics because he realized that, to be honest, integration just allowed them access to pluck our best and brightest, which is what they've done. It allowed them access. So when we couldn't go to their schools, all of our best students went where? They went to Fisk, they went to Howard, they went to Hampton, right? When they let one brother play in the MLB and we abandoned the whole baseball league. We had a whole baseball league. They let one brother play in the MLB and we let it all go. So we actually had a whole hockey league. I don't know if a lot of people know that. We had a hockey league in Minnesota, a Black hockey league, right? And now it's like 5 brothers in the NHL.
Exactly.
So we had these things, but they stomped them out for a reason. So we know what to do. We just have to return to what works. That's what the movement is about.
I think in part that is related to this notion of restoring in the minds of African people here in America their sense of value and worth. And, as Amos Wilson would say all the time, that, you extend your money where you believe that there's value. So if all of your money is going to European institutions and whatnot, that's where your value is. That's how you prove where the value is.
Correct. Absolutely.
And so you know, the ice water is their ice water is colder than ours.
Right.
You know, is it all boils down to a particular value system. But kind of going back on the policing thing, I recently had a conversation about that, aspect of what's going on now. Like what's the birth of police brutality, and with me being a historian on the long scale, I like to do a lot of ancient societies and how they evolved, and also being a person in STEM. you know, we're taught to look for patterns in coding and in mathematics and things of that nature. And so, I'm looking for the patterns in history rooted in the particular culture of a people and how it has evolved or expressed itself over a long period of time. And so, the Europeans come into history, not archaeologically, so to speak, but in terms that you can gather a little bit of their mindset because of writing. Um, Beginning with Homer in like the 6th century BCE. But when you start getting information about ancient Greece in general, and especially in Sparta, you get to see kind of I wouldn't know if this is the birth, but at least the earliest examples in history of this type of behavior and mentality in terms of a government. So, a lot of us, because of media propaganda, look to the Spartans as this kind of, fierce warrior and honorable society, from ancient Greece. And then when you really kind of study them, you see that something else is going on here. And so, of course, they had a slave society. They were a warrior society, but there was also a slave society. And so you had the Spartans, and then you have what they call the harlots or whatnot. These are other European white folks that they have enslaved to build their society. And then you see that they had this quote unquote secret police that would go around killing and harassing, trying to keep the mentality and the morale subjugated and low, respectively, so that they wouldn't rebel, because they were a warrior society. Most of the men were always off,
Right.
at war, and so this left a large slave class. And so, because they had the numbers, they had to figure out a way to keep them suppressed so they wouldn't rebel and take over, Sparta.
Correct.
So they would do exactly what you see in modern times, like we say, the stop and frisk. They would just randomly pick people to beat in the middle of the street, harass, jail, make them forced to do labor and stuff to this nature. So you see a pattern, and then you see that in Athens, then when you go up into Rome, and then when you go into Britain, and then of course here in the United States, you'll see that this is the culture. And so that's why I like that being a roundabout way to say this is why I like the perspective, that you have in terms of how to approach this, because it's not one of those we need to appeal to their humanity, type situation, because
We're beyond that.
exactly.
Yeah, we're beyond that at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and for me, it's like, if you understand that this is a culture of theirs that we have evidence for at least 2,000 years,
Right.
that ultimately you're not going to be able to compare. What you see is that they've improved the system in the way in which they oppress, their lower classes and things. So we got to study that in depth and critically, and then, find ways around it to defend against it, and to develop power for ourselves. But you, in one of your videos, you were talking about the going back to the economic component of it. and the models in terms of the customer service from businesses, and like how our businesses should be in terms of the expectations and being able to compete. And so you have some words to say concerning that, as well as the consumer, how to be, a right and conscious consumer. And so I wanted you, if you could, to kind of discuss what you were talking about in that video.
Sure. It was just ironic you mentioned that. So I was on an awards show. It was for restaurateurs this last evening. And so I spoke with them about some of those issues as well. I think I'll give you some insight. So I spoke with my older brother a couple of days ago, and he was saying, hey, we've been doing an initiative, right? We've been supporting the Black-owned restaurants. He said, but they're so expensive. and so, and my brother is super cheap. I have daughters, so I've not been afforded the opportunity to be cheap. Maybe if I had some boys, maybe I could get away with it, but you just can't with girls. So, so what I explained to him is that you're comparing apples to oranges. So as you know, in the Black community, even in a nice Black community, you don't have a lot of dining options. You're going to get a lot of franchise options. There's going to be McDonald's, Popeyes, Wendy's, KFC, Subways, right? And when you have these multi-billion-dollar corporations, they can buy their food really cheap. That's why they can give you just about anything for $5 or less, right? Because they can get everything in such bulk that they can demand those prices. But what happens when you're in a white community, you go to any suburban white community, there's a bevy of restaurants that you may not recognize. They're not franchises, but they're places where you can sit down, you can get Italian food, you can get Mexican food. There's a lot of them, right? And so that's where you see a wrap is $12. A hamburger is $10 without fries, right? It's very common in the white community. That's who you would need to compare those Black businesses to, because they have the same economy of scale in which their capacity to buy their product before they get it to you is similar. They can't buy in bulk like a McDonald's can either. So that's why their hamburger is going to be $10 and they're going to give you a higher quality. I can't compete with McDonald's based on cost. I can only beat them based on quality. If you want something cheap, then the big dog is always going to win that. There's nothing cheaper than Walmart. That's why they survive. So if you want a better television, there are places that you can go that Walmart's not going to have that TV. It is what it is. So that's how you compete against cost with quality. And that's what the Black businesses have to do and understand. And that's what the Black consumer has to do and understand, that they're going to be providing you with a higher degree of quality and that they can't buy their product as cheaply. And so the other thing I talked about as consumers is, we have to understand that we are going to have equitable expectations. So what that means is simply reward the Black businesses that are equitable, that give you the great customer service. We have to get away from this mindset of you have a bad experience and then you say, see, that's why I don't go to Black. We have to stop that foolishness. You had a bad experience. Even if you had 3 bad experiences, there's a 4th restaurant, find it. There's got to be intent. When I talk to my Jewish brothers, my Italian brothers, they tell me all the time, you're on the right track. That's what we do. It doesn't matter when they'll share their stories growing up and they say, Byron, I remember everything we did was Italian. Everything we did, like from who cut our grass to who mowed our, whatever it was Italian. Same thing with the Jewish community. That's what they have their own schools. And so the difference is we've been taught that when we do it, see, we've turned separation into a bad word. And so separation doesn't mean I think I'm better than you. It means that we have to have a degree of intent for self-preservation because we're losing. So we would have to focus on ourselves. And see, they have conditioned you to believe that that's a bad thing. When you mentioned, I love that you said Africans here in America. Because a big part of the 2-point plan, a big part of how we fight is creating a true African diaspora. So I'm in South Africa quite a bit as I have my Joburg shirt on right now. And one of the things that I love about being there is that they're not as far removed from apartheid. You got to understand, like, Mandela came in when I was in high school. I'm not that old. Like, that was fairly recent when they were willing to die in the streets. So they have a better understanding of where I'll tell you what, they may have some challenges, but they have some advantages that we don't. Number one, they're the physical majority. And number two, they do run their government. So when they had their president recently, Jacob Zuma, and he was involved in some shenanigans, they got him out. Trump can do whatever he wants, and we can't do anything about it because we don't run our government and we're not the physical majority. So it is even more critical here that we empower ourselves economically. That's how you get things done. So if you look at the civil rights movement, which was hijacked, the fact that they call it civil rights, it wasn't civil rights. Everybody had their rights but black people. It was the black rights movement. But they called it civil rights. It's just like the term unity. If you look at the NFL, right? When Kaepernick was kneeling, they wouldn't let anybody kneel. But what did they not mind? Everybody standing up and locking arms. Because the term unity denotes a shared responsibility. It suggests that somehow we are to blame for being killed as much as you are to blame for killing us. See, that's why I like that term. So what we have to get, it's got to be okay to say, no, it's you, stop killing us, and we're going to address it on our end. So what made the civil rights era impactful was there are 3 steps. The first step was protest. We got that part down. We do a great job of that. And all protest is for is to build unity and to bring attention to the cause. We're really good at that. But we are missing that important second step, which was economic empowerment. If you look at the Montgomery bus boycott, that was 380 some days. They did that for people don't know that when they teach it to you briefly in school, they make it seem like they didn't ride the bus for like a week. They did that for over a year. Before white people are like, okay, I see you all are serious. That's why I said when we had these one-day boycotts, these white people a long time ago went over a year, and that was just about buses. And so then that's when they changed the legislation. So economic empowerment, economic action is what changes the laws. And we keep trying to skip from 1 to 3. We want to protest and then get results.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way. You have to have economic empowerment. Look, I'll be on a call this coming week with the families of George Floyd and Philando Castile and the Minneapolis Black Lives Movement there. And one of the things that we're discussing is, here's how we get this done. I know that you all want convictions. I know that you all want results. But at the end of the day, what has to happen is this can't continue to happen to anyone else. And so there are some economic things that have to be put into place to keep that from happening. And so that's what we're talking about with how we fight.
Indeed. Now we're coming to a close soon. So I have this question from Hannah Boston from Facebook. She is asking, any suggestions on organizing and starting similar movements in other cities?
Yeah, sure. It's really one of those things where it's about getting the narrative out that we love Black. See, so my podcast, if you go to the website that you put up earlier, you can listen to that podcast. It was about, does Black love Black? And I had some statistics about Black on Black crime. There's a debate about whether there is such a thing, but I address all of those things with numbers and facts. I spoke with a brother. One of my initiatives is to reach out to the gangs. So I had some feedback from an OG Crip. This is pretty good information, right, and what their perspective is. But the way you start those things there is by finding like-minded individuals. And social media is a great opportunity. So you start a group in your area. to first collaborate like-minded individuals. And then you start with a simple initiative. Start with a visible project. So maybe there's a community center that's about to get shut down because they can't afford to redo their AC system. So you come together and you bail that community center out. But before you bail them out, you say, okay, we're going to do this, but we need you to put these initiatives in place. Maybe we need a seat on the board so that we can ensure that these things don't continue to happen. So you can make impact in your local communities because you know your community, you know what your community's needs are. So my advice would be to start with a Facebook group, since you called in from Facebook, for people in your area that are like-minded. Mobilize those people, find a project to invest in, and that will get your momentum going.
Indeed, indeed. This has been normally we could go a little longer, and I don't know what your time is, but I have to be a guest on another program.
Yeah, sure.
Doing this, and so I wish I could speak with you a little longer. But I want to, say thank you,
No problem.
first and foremost, for coming on the program and sharing your wisdom. And so I wanted to make sure that you got some momentum, on the thoughts and things that you are doing. And also I'm gonna reshare your screen, or my screen actually. And I'm gonna go to I'm going to his website right now. So hopefully y'all will see it, because I want y'all to visit We Fight. The link should be scrolling at the bottom of the screen, the visual component of our screens. And so to get more information about the 2-point plan in which he talked about earlier, there's a PDF that you can download here. And so you can learn more about him in the Academy. Here's a link to the Wilson Academy. But most of all, I want y'all to, again, stay informed. So sign up for his email list, and then also donate, contribute, and make sure that, he and the Institute have the resources to continue what he is doing. And if you want to contact him, of course, you can, here's a Facebook link here, and then you can go through the website as well. So I just want to let y'all know, where y'all can find him, and to encourage y'all to donate. So, I'm not going to say any other names again, but, you know where this stuff is going. And, he has the Physical Institute for you to see. And I appreciate, again, everything that he is doing. And if you have any last words for my audience here, and thank you, Kwame, first and foremost. Thank you, Kwame, for your contribution, and thank you to Sister Mika, or Tamika, for your contribution to the show. And so I'm sorry, give you the floor.
Oh, thank you, brother. No, I'm with you. I got an event for my daughter that I have to get to. A little late for myself, so I understand. I just thank you for having me on. What's most important right now is that we spread the message. The response that we're getting from various entities tells us that they do see us as a threat, but I understand that. And so I'm willing to take that, but we have to continue to move forward. And I just encourage you all to spread the How We Fight message. And I thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share that with you all this evening.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And so for those of you who are on Facebook, even those of you who are listening live on YouTube, the program that I will be joining, that It starts at 6 p.m. Eastern time. It's called the Family Meeting Town Hall Conversation. I am one of, 6 panelists. And we'll be talking about similarly, the things that we've been talking about here on this program. So I'm definitely going to big up your name and share, your website as well, as one of many, ways and approaches that we can handle this this crisis that we're in. And so, I'm a person. I come out of the Afrocentric, movement, academic movement, and so we had this thing where we talk about having a victorious consciousness,
Right.
And so that also, must be in the language, and so this is something that we will achieve, and it's blueprints like this that'll help us get there. So
Sure.
I thank you very much for
Thank you,
joining,
brother.
and I thank you all for joining, and so I will just leave y'all with my contact information, and I will see y'all Sunday. And make sure y'all visit, wefight.com, and I will see y'all Sunday and continue the fight. Thank y'all very much. Peace.